For a long time, you probably thought ADHD was just one of your things, a personality quirk, a fun trait, a mildly inconvenient feature of your character, like being bad at directions, always running late, or owning 5 different chargers but never having one when you need it. Something you could joke about, something other people could shrug at and say, "That's just how you are," as if that sentence explained anything at all. You lose your keys constantly. You forget why you opened a tab while opening 3 more. You interrupt people, then apologize, then interrupt again to explain why you interrupted. You remember extremely specific details from years ago, but cannot remember what you were doing 10 minutes ago. You start projects with explosive enthusiasm and finish them with emotional closure and good intentions. So naturally, everyone decided this was just your personality, including you. Because calling ADHD a personality quirk feels safer than calling it what it actually is, a brain thing, a neurological thing, a thing that quietly affects how you think, feel, plan, remember, regulate emotions, start tasks, finish tasks, rest, focus, manage time, and exist in a world that assumes everyone's brain works roughly the same way. But sure, let's call it quirky. Because quirky sounds fun. Quirky sounds harmless. Quirky sounds like something you could fix with better habits, a morning routine, a planner you swear you will use this time, and maybe waking up earlier, which people suggest as if mornings are not already an extreme sport. ADHD is not quirky. ADHD is your brain doing its own thing without consulting you first, then acting surprised when you struggle to keep up. Before we go any further, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And while you are listening, tell us in the comments where you are watching from. If you have ever been told that's just your personality when you are actually overwhelmed, exhausted, or quietly struggling, welcome. You are not dramatic. You are not imagining things. And no, you are not just bad at life. The idea that ADHD is a personality trait usually starts early. You are the daydreamer, the chatty one, the creative one. The kid who forgets homework but remembers random facts that are fascinating, impressive, and completely useless during math class. The one with so much potential, which is adult language for, "I do not understand you, but I expect more." You are not disruptive enough to get help, not failing enough to raise alarms, not struggling enough to be taken seriously. So instead of support, you get labels: scatterbrained, careless, too much, too sensitive, lazy but talented. None of which explain what is actually happening inside your brain. Because if ADHD were just a personality quirk, it would be consistent. You would always be distracted, always energetic, always chaotic, always the same version of yourself. People could rely on your chaos the way they rely on someone being quiet or organized. But that is not how ADHD works. Some days you are focused, sharp, productive, and almost suspiciously competent. You solve problems effortlessly. You work for hours without noticing time pass. You feel capable, confident, and briefly wonder if you accidentally fixed yourself overnight. Other days, replying to a single message feels like preparing for a major life event that requires emotional support, a snack, and possibly a short lie down. That is not personality. That is brain chemistry. If ADHD were a personality quirk, motivation would work the way people think it does. You would care about something and then simply do it. Importance would translate into action. Deadlines would feel real before they were actively threatening your peace. But caring has never been the problem. You care deeply, painfully deeply. You care so much that you overthink everything. You care so much that mistakes feel catastrophic. You care so much that criticism echoes for days. You care so much that resting feels irresponsible even when you are completely exhausted. ADHD is not a lack of caring. It is a problem with regulation. Regulating attention, regulating motivation, regulating emotions, regulating energy. Your brain does not distribute effort evenly. It dumps massive amounts of energy into things that are interesting and withholds it from things that are boring, even if they matter and have real consequences. Which is why you can hyper-focus on something unnecessary for hours and still struggle to start something important, not because you are irresponsible, not because you lack discipline, but because your brain runs on dopamine, not importance. If ADHD were a personality quirk, planners would fix it, apps would fix it, systems would fix it. You would not have a graveyard of abandoned planners, unused notebooks, half-configured productivity apps, color-coded calendars you forgot existed, and alarms you silence with confidence and then immediately forget. You would not get excited about organization. Spend hours designing the perfect system, feel briefly invincible, and then abandon it the moment the novelty wears off. That is not inconsistency. That is dopamine. If ADHD were a personality quirk, rest would feel restful. Instead, rest feels uncomfortable. Sitting still makes your thoughts louder. Doing nothing feels wrong. The moment you stop moving, your brain starts listing unfinished tasks, forgotten messages, missed responsibilities, and awkward moments from years ago, like it is preparing evidence for a trial. So you are never fully resting, you are buffering, your body is still, your mind is sprinting, people see you sitting and assume you are lazy because they cannot see the internal marathon happening behind your eyes. They cannot see the constant mental motion, the planning, the replaying, the worrying, the jumping between thoughts at a speed. That would impress a high-performance computer. If ADHD were a personality quirk, emotions would be proportional. You would not feel things at full volume. Small disappointments would feel small. Rejection would sting briefly and then fade. Instead, emotions hit fast and hard. Excitement spikes instantly. Frustration escalates. Criticism sticks. A mildly awkward interaction can replay in your mind like a feature-length film with bonus commentary, alternate endings, and a director's cut. That is not being dramatic. That is emotional regulation difficulty, a brain thing. If ADHD were a personality quirk, time would behave normally, you would feel it passing. You would sense deadlines approaching. You would not constantly be shocked by how late it is, how long something took, or how an entire afternoon disappeared while you were just doing one thing. Instead, time is either now or not now. Deadlines are imaginary until they are suddenly terrifying. The future feels abstract. The present feels loud and demanding. That is not irresponsibility. That is time blindness. Another brain thing, one of the biggest reasons ADHD gets mislabeled as personality, is masking. You learned early how to hide the chaos, how to sit still, how to nod at the right moments, how to apologize quickly, how to smile while internally panicking. You learned how to appear functional while working twice as hard inside your head. You learned how to be charming about mistakes, how to laugh at yourself before anyone else could, how to turn struggle into humor so people would not look too closely. And it worked. People stopped worrying. They stopped asking questions. They stopped offering help. Because if you can joke about it, it must not be serious. But humor does not cancel difficulty. It just makes it survivable. If ADHD were a personality quirk, burnout would not happen from normal life. You would not feel exhausted after days that looked calm from the outside. You would not feel drained after conversations, decisions, errands, or simple routines. But ADHD brains work harder to do the same things. Every transition costs energy. Every decision costs energy. Every moment of focus costs energy. Every attempt to self-regulate costs energy. And none of that effort is visible. So when you burn out, people are confused. They say things like, "But you didn't even do that much." and you want to scream because you did. You did it all internally. You ran meetings in your head before they happened. You rehearsed conversations. You managed your tone. You redirected your attention 100 times. That counts. ADHD is not about having a fun, quirky brain. It is about having a brain that requires more effort to regulate in a world that demands constant self-control, consistency, and calm. If ADHD were a personality quirk, medication would not help, therapy would not help, accommodations would not help, understanding how your brain works would not change your life. But it does. Because ADHD is not who you are. It is how your brain processes information. And that distinction matters. Because when you think ADHD is your personality, you blame yourself. You think you are broken. You think you lack discipline. You think you should be able to just try harder. When you understand ADHD is neurological, the story changes. You stop asking, "What is wrong with me?" You start asking, "What does my brain need?" You stop forcing productivity. You start designing support. You stop measuring yourself by standards that were never built for you. And here is the sarcastic part people do not like. If ADHD were just a personality quirk, you would be able to turn it off when it is inconvenient. You would not struggle in private. You would not lie awake planning to be better tomorrow. You would not feel guilty resting. Personality quirks are optional. ADHD is not. It shows up whether you want it to or not. On good days and bad days. When you are motivated and when you are exhausted. When you care and when you have nothing left. And yes, ADHD can be funny. The forgotten appointments, the wrong rooms, the mental tangents, the chaos. Humor belongs here, but humor does not mean it is trivial. If anything, humor is how many people survive it. And if you feel comfortable, share whether you were ever told your ADHD was just your personality, whether someone laughed it off, minimized it, or framed it as a quirky trait you should simply learn to manage better. You might be surprised how many people read those comments and feel understood for the first time. Sometimes knowing you are not alone is not a solution, but it is a relief. And that relief matters more than most people realize. Here is the truth. You are not flaky. You are not careless. You are not undisciplined. You are not broken. You have a brain that processes the world differently, a brain that feels deeply, a brain that notices everything, a brain that struggles with filters, not effort. If this story feels familiar, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Not because it fixes anything magically, but because more stories like this are coming. Stories that put words to experiences most people struggle to explain, even to themselves. And while you are here, scroll down to the comments and tell us where you are watching from, seriously. It helps remind you that you are not the only one sitting there nodding along thinking, "Oh wow, that's me." Once you understand that, you stop trying to fix yourself and start supporting yourself. And that is where everything changes. ADHD is not a personality quirk. It is a brain thing, and treating it like one is the difference between surviving your life and actually living it.